I'm going to begin my sermon this morning by telling you an original story by Janine Grossmeyer, a storyteller, worship leader, and religious educator at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Southern Maryland. Many years ago, in the land of Transylvania, in a mountain valley watered by a rushing stream, there was a village, and the people who lived in that village were Unitarians. But they had no church. So they decided to build one high on the hillside above their valley, so that it would be there up on the hillside, looking down over them in the village below, like a mother watches over her children. So they made plans, and they set about building their church. The village elders directed them in this work. There were stonemasons who cut great squares, great blocks of stone, and put them together in strong walls and a sturdy tower for the church. There were foresters who selected the strongest trees and cut them into beams to build the roof of the church, and then made close-fitting shingles for the roof itself, so that not even a drop of rain would come through. There were glaziers who made countless small diamond-shaped panes of glass, and then fit them together into windows with leaded lines. There were carpenters who carved the two massive doors for the church and hung them so well on the pegs that they would open and close at the push of a finger. There were weavers who made cloths for the altar and other wall hangings and wove into them pictures of birds and flowers. And there were smiths who took strong black iron and made tall lampstands and shaped bronze into shining reflectors that would go behind the lamps on those lampstands. Now, when the outside of the church was done, it was time to decorate the inside. So the painters in the village put out pots of their best colours, royal red and shimmering gold and brilliant blue, and everyone in the village who wanted to picked up a brush and painted on the walls in their favourite colours. And soon a bell came from a foundry somewhere off in a distant town, and everybody in the village took to pulling the ropes with a heave and a hoe to hoist that bell up into the tower. And finally, after many weeks of work with everybody in the village dedicating their time to building this church together, it was finished. And on the last afternoon of their work, the village elders said, "It's now time to go back to our homes and have dinner. And then get washed, put on your best clothes, and we will all come back here this evening to worship." And so everybody went back down the valley into the village, leaving behind the church sitting on the hillside, looking out over the village like a mother watches over her children. Everyone went, that is, except for a little girl named Zora and her father. They had brought their supper with them, and they sat on the hillside eating their bread and cheese and looking up at the church. And when they were done, they went inside, opening the doors. And Zora ran from one picture painted on the walls to another, her footsteps echoing off the stone. And then finally she stood right in the very middle and twirled around, taking it all in. And she said, "What a beautiful church this is. Look, Father, look how magnificent this is, how grand." And her father said, "Yes, Zora, it is. It is indeed a beautiful church." And he was filled with pride. And then Zora said, "But it's not finished." And her father said, "What do you mean?" And Zora said, "Well, look, all the lampstands, there are no lamps on them. When the people come back this evening, the church is going to be dark." And Zora's father said, "Every family has been entrusted with a lamp and will bring it this evening. The light of the church comes from the people." And Zora said, "Well, where is our lamp? Did we bring it with us?" And her father said, "No, your mother has it. She will bring it up to us. But now it's time for us to ring the bell and call everybody to come up to the church." So they rang the bell and they went outside and they waited as the sun set and the darkness began to gather. And looking down at the village below them, they started to see lights appearing in the streets. Just a few at first, and then more and more of them. And then those lights started to move towards the edge of the village. And they gathered into a stream of light that wove its way up the side of the hill towards the church. And as the lights got closer, eventually Zora could see that they were oil lamps that people were carrying. And there near the front was her own mother, carrying her family's oil lamp. So they went inside the church then, and Zora's father helped her place their lamp on one of the lampstands, just as everybody else was placing their lamps up on the lampstands too. And soon the whole church was filled with light, with a lamp in every corner. And throughout the service, as all the people prayed and sung and worshipped together, Zora was watching the lamps. And in particular, she watched her family's lamp, how it flickered and shared in its light with the whole church. After the service was done, her mother helped her get the lamp back down, and they carried it back home again, where they used its light to get ready for bed. But as Zora was washing her face and getting ready for bed, she was thinking the whole time. And she said, "Mother?" And her mother said, "Yes, Zora, what is it?" And Zora said, "Father said that the light of the church comes from its people. And we took our lamps to the church, and that was how we had light there. But then we took that light back home again with us." And her mother said, "Yes, that's right. The light of the church does come from its people, but the light that the people use also comes from the church. We carry these lamps with us. We take them to and from the church, and at home they light our way as well. But even when we're not at the church, even when the lamps are not lit, we still carry the light of truth in our minds and the flame of love in our hearts to show us the way to be. And when you are older, you will be looking after this lamp yourself. And when you have children of your own, you will entrust it to them, just as we are entrusting it to you." And Zora said, "But there's only one lamp. How's that going to work?" And her mother said, "Well, you will make more lamps as you need to, and that way you will share the light with everybody who needs it. And now it is time to go to sleep. Good night, my daughter." So Zora's mother tucked her in and kissed her on this cheek and that cheek and on the forehead, and then Zora went to sleep and dreamt of the lights in the church. And as the years passed and she grew up, the lamp, the family's lamp, was entrusted to her, and every time the bell rang in the church up on the hillside, she carried the lamp up there for the service, and then she carried it home again afterwards. And when she had children of her own, she entrusted the lamp to them and made others, so that all of her children had lamps of their own for their families. And so it went on century after century, even until today. And always the light of truth and the flame of love from that Unitarian church on the hillside lit their way, as it does still for us today as well. I don't know if Janine Grossmeyer has ever been to Star Island, but when I first read her story, it reminded me of the evening candlelight services that happen in the chapel there. Star Island is one of the Isles of Shoals in the Gulf of Maine, about 10 miles out from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and it's the location of a conference centre that is run jointly by the Unitarian Universalists and the Congregationalists. At the highest point on the island, maybe 40 feet above sea level, there's a stone chapel, which seats maybe 80 people if they are quite friendly. There's a different week-long conference every week of the summer, and many of them begin each day's proceedings with a morning service in the chapel, but almost without exception they end each day with an evening service in the dark. It's an island tradition, dating back who knows how many decades, with everyone picking up a lantern with a pre-lit candle in it, then making their way up the rocky path to the chapel the lantern their only light in the darkness. Once inside the chapel, everyone hangs their lanterns from hooks that are mounted high on the walls, and the service itself takes place in the gentle glow of dozens of candles. Now, I haven't been to Transylvania, which is now part of Romania, and where there are indeed Unitarians, some 80 to 100,000 of them in fact, and a majority of them ethnic Hungarians. As a denomination, the Unitarian Church of Transylvania was founded in 1568, with at least one of its still existing churches even older by a couple of decades. There's no direct historical link between Transylvanian Unitarians and American Unitarian Universalists, though since the fall of Ceausescu there has been a partner church program that now includes some 150 pairs of American and Transylvanian congregations. But there's certainly plenty of history there to explore. What's more, while Unitarianism in Transylvania is clearly Christian, just as American Unitarianism was prior to the emergence of the Transcendentalist movement, it is emphatically non-dogmatic, liberal, and progressive. Believing that Jesus was human, a spiritual leader and a wise teacher, but not a saviour. The purpose of religion is to follow the primary teaching of Jesus, namely love toward God and love toward all neighbours. As put by Elek Rezi, who is Professor of Unitarian Systematic Theology at the university that trains ministers in Transylvania, the real purpose of religion is not to prepare people for another life, but to inspire them to live this life as it ought to be lived. Or, thanks to the Church, as Zora's mother put it, we carry the light of truth in our minds and the flame of love in our hearts to show us the way to be. Much as I like Forest Church's image of the cathedral of the world, with an unknowable and mysterious light outside the cathedral shining in through so many different windows, I love the simple response that Zora's father gives when his daughter is concerned that the church will be dark. The light of the church, he tells her, comes from its people. And actually, in a version of Church's invocation published by UU World, he included an acknowledgement that as with all extended metaphors for meaning, the light shining in from outside is imperfect. The light of God or truth or being itself, call it what you will, shines not only upon us, Church noted, but out from within us as well. The light is a metaphor, and there needn't even be actual light for there to be illumination, as in Susanna Seaton's story about her family celebrating the winter solstice in the dark. But as Unitarian Universalists, we do like to make the metaphor tangible with actual flames. For example, my favourite part of every Christmas Eve service, the favourite part I suspect for most Unitarian ministers, is the ceremony of passing the flame. With a single candle lit from the chalice, the flame is silently passed along the rows and from each row to the one behind. Standing up front, I can see the tongues of fire multiplying as they spread, until soft light shines in every face and the whole sanctuary is aglow. Then, each of us holding our candles, we sing Silent Night, adding another dimension to the warmth and beauty that fills the room. Now, there are many ways to understand the symbolism of this ceremony, something that many Unitarian Universalist churches do at Christmas Eve. The individual flame can represent hope or love or wisdom or kindness, something that we all have, something that we all need. And the passing of the flame, the way that it spreads out, represents how hope and love and wisdom and kindness can be shared and multiplied through the simple act of human connection. It's a sign of possibility. And seeing that it is possible encourages us to embrace a greater vision, to imagine the flame taken out into the world and shared with everyone. Another way to understand it is to consider the individual flame as a sign of the individual spirit. There's something about seeing all of those individual flames, the only sources of light in the darkened room. Each one by itself, of course, isn't particularly bright, but put dozens of them together, and they seem to fill our humble sanctuary with an illumination that offers warmth and love. I sometimes imagine that view on Sunday mornings. In place of daylights or electric lights, I imagine all those candles held in front of each person here. I imagine you when the lay leader says the familiar words, "All those of good will are welcome to join with us in our individual and collective search for truth and meaning in a community where we commit ourselves daily to honouring the inherent worth and dignity of every person." Words that are so easy to say, but so hard to live. I imagine a few more individual flames coming into the room and finding a place where they can be sheltered from the elements. I imagine a flame here or there wavering, or perhaps even going out, but being relit by another flame nearby. It's no surprise that as the lay leader lights the chalice on Sunday mornings, I frequently speak of the special power that comes from bringing our individual flames together. What I'm wondering right now, in the midst of what is supposed to be a happy holiday season, when there are so many reasons to be unhappy with the state of the world, is how we can take that special power and carry it out beyond our walls and apply it in those places that need it. We do this already, of course, when we make and serve dinner at St. Paul's, as we do every third Friday, or when we run a night of the Port Winter Shelter, as we're doing at the beginning of January and then again in March, or when we stand on our corner in the darkness with candles for Transgender Day of Remembrance, as we do every November. But I know that we have the potential to do more, to do a lot more, to apply our power not only to serve the immediate needs of the hungry and the homeless, but to address the core reasons of poverty itself, not only to bear witness to the suffering and violence done to those our society deems less worthy because of their gender or race, but also to do what we can to dismantle systemic oppression. So this Thursday evening, this Christmas Eve, when we pass the flame to one another, when we allow that warm, wonderful glow of candlelight to fall upon us, when we join voices in gentle song, I hope that you too will be thinking about how we can take that collective beauty and apply it to the wider world. As it shines out through the windows of our sanctuary, may it shine forth from our souls, in the good work we do as individuals, but also in the difference we make as a congregation. With open hearts and arms spread wide, in this season of mystery and miracle, of comforting darkness and cheering light, may we find the hope and the joy, the peace and the love that we need in our own lives and that our world needs from our shared life together. So may it be.